to one of Wharfedale's biggest successes, one of its biggest selling speakers, the Denton. Little did we know the revolution, in a way, that it would engender. We did know that the original Denton and Linton, the design, the ID design by Robert Gutman, which made it such a popular speaker, helped make it such a popular speaker, was part of its success. The other part of its success, of course, was delivering a big sound from a small speaker, a small, in those days, bookshelf speaker, something you put in with your G-plan furniture. What we didn't realize was that the very look of that speaker would take off so well. And its success prompted us to then go further with the Linton, which I like to tell an amusing story that when we first showed it to all our sales guys internationally, they went, "No, I can't sell that, way too big." It is now Wharfedale's biggest selling speaker.
Wow.
So obviously we touched a nerve amongst the buying public in delivering something that was a lovely piece of furniture to put in your room, but of course also something that, again, sounded not so much like a heritage speaker. Anybody who's owned a pair of original Lintons will know that what we do now is very different. But something that was very, very good value and delivered a performance which you just don't get out of the very slim speakers that were developing during the 90s. And today, I'd like to introduce the latest in our heritage series, which is the Super Denton. Now, we're not using the word super because we're trying to be funny about anything. This was actually a term that was coined by Wharfedale back in the 70s, and perhaps slightly earlier than that. I'm not quite sure when it was first introduced, but there was a new version of Denton came out in around 1971, which was a three-way speaker. And this is in fact what we have done to Denton. So we have introduced the dome mid-range unit that we developed for the highly successful Evo series, and again was a big part, I think, of the sound of that speaker. We've introduced a version of that into the Denton to create the Super Denton. And the three-way gives us the usual advantage of a three-way in that you have mid-range and treble unsullied by bass frequencies. Now, what I mean by that is that for bass frequencies, you are wanting a large diaphragm movement, especially from a smaller speaker. And this has an effect upon the detailing and accuracy and timbre of the mid-range. So by separating that out into a separate unit, we can extract what I think a more vibrant and more enticing and more detailed output from Denton. In its day, Denton 3 was described by reviewers back then as having a remarkably big sound for such a small speaker. And this was my aim in designing Super Denton. Super Denton is a fairly efficient speaker. It's about 87, 88 dB, depending on how you measure it, for 2.83 volts input. It's a nominal 6 ohm load, so it's fairly easy to drive. There are no wild phase swings to make it difficult for amplifiers so that it will suit a wide range of amplifiers. Something I like to do. I don't like to make things difficult for amplifiers to drive because I don't know, as a designer, what customers are going to use in their homes, and I want to get the best out of my loudspeakers, no matter what amplifiers they partner with. So it's an important point. It is a ported system. It's ported round the back, like the Denton 80th and Denton 85th anniversary were. So it has a very good bass response. In fact, today we've had people coming in this room say, "Where's the sub?" which is always a nice thing to hear from such a small speaker. And I hope that you'll find out when you test it that it is a very wide-ranging loudspeaker, and that for such a small size, it does deliver an astonishing performance. In terms of technical details, the base is woven Kevlar, as we've used in previous Dentons. The mid-range is a cloth dome, a 50mm cloth dome, and the treble unit is a version, in fact, of the treble unit that was developed for Dovedale. So it has a good pedigree in terms of drive units. Putting them all together is a crossover, which, as usual with my designs, spent hours and hours and hours, months and months, listening and tweaking and fine-tuning. For me, that's an incredibly important part. As I was saying to a customer who came in earlier, if a speaker's going to work, if a system, if a HiFi system is going to work, it's got to engage you musically. It's, if you put on something that makes you want to dance down the room or tap your feet or move your body, then it's doing really well. That's something I always look for when developing a product. We're not making stands specifically for the speakers. I think there's enough stands out there. You've probably all got your own favourites anyway. The stands that you see, by the way, are a special made for us by HiFi-freaks. I don't know whether they're going to make it as a product. I'm sure they will if enough people ask for it. But please feel free to use your favourite stands with your speakers. And price, they are 5 pence short of £1,000, so £999.95. I haven't looked into it. I think when the Denton 3 was introduced, it was claimed that was the smallest three-way. Yeah. They may well be. I haven't checked out the opposition. I would agree with you. When we first approached this as a concept, and it was done both as what would customers want out of an improved Denton, what could we deliver, and also how could we deliver that in a fairly small package, because obviously we've got three-way speakers which are quite tall, as you know, in the Evo series, and we've had some criticism from people who say they're too big for stand mounts, and we wanted to keep them small. They are in fact 50mm taller than a conventional Denton, so it's not a huge height increase. When we first approached it, I said, I don't think we can do this for the reasons that you mentioned. However, this mid-range unit does go up. I mean, we're not using it that high, but it has the capability of going way, way up to 8 kilohertz and beyond. So by choosing a relatively high crossover frequency, the mid-range is doing most of the work, and that's what you hear. So you will find when you listen to them that they actually image extremely well.
So
very much so, very much so. And our Spanish distributor here said to me earlier on after listening, this is like it's like a breath of fresh air. They're so lively. And that's really the benefit that having a separate mid-range unit brings.